Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Transfer portal season largely coming to a close. Starting to look back at the last couple of months and start grading some of these teams out in terms of what they've done in the transfer portal. And I figured we'd start with a program that I think has been one of the most efficient and effective teams at using the transfer portal. That's Mike Norvell, the Florida State Seminoles. Want to get into what they've done the last couple of months, talk about what we really like that they did, talk about a few things that we wish we saw them do. Really excited to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys, to the Florida State fans. I mean, we have broken down, I think, every single commitment that Florida State had in this portal window. I can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear the grade that you would give Florida State as well. I'll share with you guys as well what my grade is. I'm going to give Florida State a B+. And I went back and forth between A-, B+, and there are a couple of reasons why I gave them a B+. I want to get into the things that I liked about Florida State first. And I think that starts with, you see a lot of teams that use the portal heavily lose a lot of good players. You look at Florida State, they brought in 17 transfers, 10 of which were evaluated as 4 stars, according to 24/7 Sports. They lost some players, and this is not a shot at those players that decided to leave, but I don't know if a single player that left Florida State was going to be in the 2 deep of that roster heading into 2024. And that is something that not a lot of people talk about. It's really easy to talk about the talent that you have coming into the program. How about the talent that you have leaving? And I think Mike Norvell being able to grab really good players from the portal and then hold on to a lot of their contributors from last year. And I think that one shows you how effective he is at using the portal, but more importantly, I think it shows you the culture of this Florida State program. I think that is probably one of the most underappreciated aspects of using the portal. Can you land really good players, but keep the good players that are already on your roster? I think Florida State did a great job of that. That's probably my number one thing I like. I think, secondly, line of scrimmage play. It was a strong emphasis for Florida State during this portal, I guess during both the winter and spring portal window. You look at what they brought in. Let's start on the offensive line. TJ Ferguson, high upside interior offensive lineman, a guy like Richie Leonard IV. We talked a lot about Florida State, and we said last year in 2023, they checked just about every single box that you wanted to see a program check last year. The one question mark I kind of had was, how good is this offensive line? Is this offensive line good enough to go win a college football playoff game, win a national championship? And unfortunately, the college football playoff committee didn't get a chance, or didn't give us a chance to really find out. But that was probably one of the larger concerns we had if we're Florida State fans. And I think they did a really good job, not only retaining most of their guys coming back in 2024, but also adding 2 guys in TJ Ferguson and then Richie Leonard IV, who has a lot of starting experience in the SEC. And then you look on the defensive side of the football and say, Sione Lolea, second-team All-Pac-12 kind of guy. Marvin Jones Jr., a guy that has a ton of upside as an edge rusher. You bring in Grady Kelly from Colorado State. You bring in Tamiwa from West Virginia. Mike Norvell had a really strong emphasis on the line of scrimmage, and I think that's exactly probably the question mark we had about this program. And I think that's another important thing to note, is using the portal, not only bringing good players, but bringing the good players at the positions that you need them the most. You see some programs, Colorado, I'm kind of looking at them, where they just take, and it doesn't seem like there's any method. You know what I mean? They're just bringing in good players, or kind of good players. I hope no Colorado fans are listening to this. Kind of good players, and then they come into the 2024 year, what we saw in 2023 with a really imbalanced roster. Really, really good wide receivers, but you can't pass protect up front. I think Mike Norvell did a really good job evaluating where do we need to address in the transfer portal. That's what they went out and did. I think the last thing I want to talk about, another sneaky thing that Mike Norvell has done a great job of, adding young talent in the transfer portal. And you look at some of these guys, a lot of the guys that Florida State brought in are going into only their second, maybe third year of college football. I'm looking at guys like Sean Murphy going into his third year, Earl Little Jr., third year, Jalen Brown only the second year. Florida State went after a lot of young talent. And I think a lot of people just assume that the transfer portals for one-year rentals. Yeah, you see a fair amount of that, right? You think about a guy like Keon Coleman. We kind of all knew he wasn't going to be there for over 6 months, right? But there's also a way where you can use the portal to build your roster as well. And if you get guys that are only going into their second, third year that have multiple years of eligibility, and you look at some other guys, Jordan Travis, a guy that came in from the portal, he was developed in Tallahassee. A guy like Trey Benson came in through the portal, developed in Tallahassee. I think you can say a lot of that for a lot of different names on that Florida State roster. I think Mike Norvell has a strong emphasis on getting guys that have multiple years of eligibility that they can go build around. So that's another thing that I really like. Getting to the things that I disliked and I wish I saw more of and why they got a B+. It's still, that's a good grade. I mean, this is the first one we've doing, but I've gotten a lot of C's in my notebooks. Yeah, at least it was B+ was a good grade for me in high school. I guess we'll leave it at that. So anyways, you look to the things I disliked about Florida State. One is the proven wide receiver, and I really like bringing in Malik Benson. I've been banging the table for him. I really like Jaylen Brown coming from LSU. Obviously, I like a lot of the young wide receivers on Florida State. One of the things I worry about for Florida State heading into 2024, they don't really have a proven wide receiver. I don't know if there's a wide receiver on that roster that has caught for over 400 yards during a season. I really like the talent in that wide receiver room. That's kind of been something we've talked about throughout the couple of weeks and really the last couple of months is, hey, we love what Florida State has in the wide receiver room from a talent standpoint, but there's not many proven contributors. Now, I think Malik Benson can be a wide receiver one at the college football level, but hasn't put it together yet. I think one of the things I would have liked to see Florida State have done is go and got a proven wide receiver that you know what he can bring to the table. I think that'd make me just a little bit more comfortable in this pass catcher room heading into 2024. Last thing I'd want is a tight end. And it's hard to get at Mike Norvell too much because I don't know if there's a good tight end in the portal. We kind of continue to talk about tight ends. I thought Daquan Wright in the winter was really good from Virginia Tech, but outside of that, how many tight ends were going to make this Florida State team better? So, yes, it was a need for Florida State. I think a lot of you mentioned that in the comments section. I just don't know if there was an opportunity to go bring in a tight end that would upgrade this program. And again, if you bring in a veteran tight end, you're probably taking away reps from a guy like Landon Thomas, who you don't really want to do. So, hard to get. You know what? I'll give it an A- because maybe I'm being too critical with that tight end. Last thing I wanted to talk about was a linebacker pre-spring. They brought in Sean Murphy. Doesn't sound like he grabbed the bull by the horns in terms of that other linebacker spot. So they go out and get Cam Riley. I wish they went out and got a Cam Riley before the spring and got him involved in spring practice, knowing the playbook. And we kind of noticed that was a problem with this Florida State roster. And although Sean Murphy excited a lot of us in terms of the athleticism he brought to the table, he played 35 snaps as a linebacker during his career. There were some question marks about can he play at a college football level. I wish they brought in more of a proven commodity at that linebacker spot, but maybe I'm being, because again, even at the linebacker spot, it wasn't like there were real studs at that position. And so I think Florida State did. I'm going to bump them up to an A- because again, you landed one of the premier quarterbacks in the transfer portal. That's always hard to do. You brought in, two starting caliber offensive linemen, two starting caliber defensive linemen. That was really hard to do. A nice haul by Mike Norvell. I'll give him an A-. A couple of things that we wish we would have seen, but you make no mistake about it. This is a roster that's going to be really, really good heading into 2024. We'll cut it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.